Hello and welcome. Here we are for our inaugural broadcast of Lunch with Pete. Yes, you have been invited virtually to Pete's uh, undisclosed location, where he's going to share with us all the tips and tricks that is the Pete Erskine experience. And if you've ever been with Pete on a show, that yellow Pelican, don't ever volunteer to pick it up. It's heavy. Right? Should come with a warning. But Pete's we've known each other a long time now. Mac, obviously you go back even further with
Yes.
Pete. And I think one of the things that, speaking for a lot of people, Pete, is we appreciate your openness, your ability to share, your willingness to share, right? And your hair, you've shared that over the years, right? Both in color and density, or a lack thereof. But that's the evolution of ourselves in the industry. And Mac, before we move to Pete, let's talk about show prep for just a second, right? This is a pretty big a big topic. A lot of times we've known, we'd like to do better show prep. We'd like to do more show prep. What are some of your thoughts on show prep as a whole, and how do you rank certain things?
Well, I'm very big on pre-show paperwork. Um, I don't label quite as extensively as Pete does. I very often label with tape because uh, the label software he uses only really works under Windows, and I'm a dedicated non-Windows user. Um, even though I do run Windows in a VM on my Mac for software use, but it doesn't seem to work for me with brother P-Touch.
Yeah,
But I think that advanced work and paperwork is the key to making the load in go smooth. It's how you're going to communicate what you want to everyone who's working with you. I mean, when I prepare patch sheets, I do it in FileMaker, and I have layouts that present the information in different formats, so that at front of house, I would have a format that shows me how all the cable comes to the console. But then I would have sheets to hand out to the A2 that show it by stage box, so that they can say, this stage box, this is what plugs into it. But on my end, it's what comes out, or in the analog days, it was what came out of the 40 pair or the 56 pair, whatever was coming to front of house. And that really smooths the correct installation of the system when you're loading in. And I think paperwork and prep is critical to having a show that when you start to rehearse actually works. That when the technical rehearsals begin, you're really at a place where all you're doing is tweaking. And
that's
Pete is a master of prep.
oh, no doubt about that. And the can I be so bold as to say that the more paperwork prep and that you do, I think that is as we're professionals in this business, that speaks to what your commitment to a given project is. Sometimes we're under the gun. There's times when we're back to back to back to back, and things may not be quite as polished as we would like. But overall, our commitment to paperwork is there, right? So we're not saying that every gig's going to be perfect, but to focus, and when you're building a team, paperwork, if attitude is the number one thing, paperwork is probably the number two thing, right?
Yeah.
Because number one, well, Pete's number one, but
Also onto that, a little bit to that point, what we do can be very complicated. So using paperwork to communicate what I want to do to everyone who's working with me is important, but it's also a place for me to go back and remember what it was I want to do.
right.
You
Right.
can get lost.
Exactly.
You can get lost in the depth of what you're trying to do, and sometimes you need to be reminded of exactly why you plotted it out this way.
Right,
And,
exactly. That's
and that's all there in the paperwork.
and I think, Pete, that's where we hand it over to you so you can start putting us through what's your thought process and how do you go about what it is that is both your prep and I think some of this will touch on what you're actually doing on site once that installation has begun. So I'm gonna switch off here. I'm sure I'll have some questions, and I know the
As
audience
will
is
I.
gonna have questions, and we'll be tuning in and watching you here.
When I started in this business 62 years ago, uh, we didn't have to label too much, and a lot of it was just scribbled on pieces of paper because I don't even think we had spreadsheets in those days. Um, but you still had to have something to hand out to your crew, even if it was only one other person. Um, First time I started using this label program uh, was for the Beijing Olympics. And I was working as the comms programmer and designer for Riedel Communications. It was a humongous system. And what I designed was using the P-Touch editor software for PC as opposed to Mac, uh, allows you to have 16 different graphic layouts on tabs. So you can design a label with the information being pulled from a spreadsheet in all different shapes, and we'll go through how that's all done. I had a very upsetting accident happen on that show. We were using yellow plastic labeling tape, and it stuck very well. And we didn't have to worry about it falling off the belt packs or anything. And I designed the label so it said not only what piece of equipment, where it was going to go, what kind of headset it had, who the actual user was, where it was going to go, what time it had to be installed, and the location. And so I would just hand these labels out to the audio crew. And we had a comms audio crew of about 30 people on this show, just doing comms. And so we ended up passing out almost 150 belt packs spread out through the roof, side, everywhere, all over the stadium, and about 100 plus panels everywhere. And it was great because I created the whole design in the spreadsheet, printed it on a piece of paper, gave it to the crew, they stuck it on the equipment and sent it out. Well, 4 years later, cut to 4 years later, I'm again doing comms for Riedel. And we get to the venue, and somewhere along the line, I said, well, I'm going to make my labels. And I got this very cold reaction from the Riedel crew. And I said, well, what's the matter? And he said, you can't do labels. No labels. No labels. I said, what do you mean? And then they explained to me something they never told me 4 years ago. When they finally got all the equipment back to the shop and they pulled the yellow labels off, the yellow didn't come off. It stuck to all the equipment. And it took them months of alcohol rubbing and everything to get them all cleaned up. And so this is something that I've learned painfully on the biggest show I've ever done, and deal with every other show after that. So now at the very least, I cover all my belt packs and all my panels with black gaffer's tape and put the labels on that. And then I have recently found another possibility. This is a piece of that kind of flooring that has ribs in it, like that, those ribs. And I've covered it with pieces of vinyl tape. So I have this vinyl tape, which is about as wide as my labels, and I stick my labels on this vinyl tape. It sticks very well to the vinyl tape, but I've found this tape does not leave any residue or any thing on the equipment, even if left on for 2 or 3 weeks at a time in heat and cold and whatever. And it still retains the stickiness, mostly because when I'm storing it in my clipboard, in my 3-ring binder, the tape is stuck on this bumpy thing. So I'm not really sticking all this stickum to the bumpy, and I can easily pull it off and paste it on my belt pack. Kelly?
Well, you know what? That was exactly a lead in for something I forgot to talk about at the top of the show, which is questions, right? Because as soon as you said that rib material, my immediate mind was, I'm going to be seeing piles of emails now. What piece of Home Depot magic did you buy, or where did you get that? And that prompted me to think, go into the questions area, post your questions. We'll be capturing those. We'll ask them as they come in. A lot of this right now, I'm going to do my best to not interrupt, because I know you have, we've got a lot to get through. I'll just give everybody a hint. It's probably going to go longer than an hour, but there's no cost, and stay on as long as you can. You can watch it again later too, but we'll try and capture those things. But that was the main thing. So Pete, back to you.
There we go. So a lot of the shops in New York, particularly Claire Brothers and World Stage and that sort of stuff, immediately started automatically covering all their equipment with gaffer's tape, not only to protect them against the nefarious Pete Erskine labels, but anybody's labels. It's easier to tear off a piece of gaffer's tape than it is to tear off any kind of label. Now, recently, a couple of years ago, Josh Flower discovered that Brother was making a 3-color printer, black, white, and red. And so I started using that because you can make a much more interesting label with that. And those labels were paper. Now, the thing about paper is, first of all, it removes from cables a whole lot easier than the plastic tape, which you literally have to cut off to get it to come off. But it does leave a paper residue on equipment when you pull it off the equipment. It leaves the white paper stickum still on the unit. So that's worked fine. Now, sticking those labels on this works out fine because they stick fine. The vinyl tape sticks fine. And this is the vinyl tape. You know, I'm going to have to look out what vinyl tape I actually ended up buying. I bought about 10 different kinds of tape. And this was the one that I decided was the best. And if I'm not mistaken, it's a vinyl tape. But I will put the link on it in the questions that will be posted with the video when we're done. There'll be a PDF of the questions posted with the video. So what I usually start out with is a Excel spreadsheet. Now the P-Touch editor uses Excel spreadsheets as its database, and recently an upgrade in the P-Touch editor started using the newer version of Excel spreadsheets, not XLS, but XLSR, I think. XLS, I forget, but we'll find out. I'm going to go back to my spreadsheet screen that I'm showing you. And in this screen, this is a typical screen I use to prepare for a show. And when I start a new show, I basically duplicate this and then erase everything in it. So in this screen, I have created it in Google Sheets. And the reason I do that is I then can share it, the screen, with the TD, producer, lighting department, all the different departments, which will allow them to go in and at their leisure, fill in their names of their crew and where their locations are, and it facilitates collecting the information. Now, names for me are really, really important, particularly when you get down into the wireless comms section of the sheet. Here's free speak. You know, you have 25, 50 wireless belt packs, and if you don't put names on them, everybody, including people that aren't really part of the show, will come up and say, I need a wireless belt pack. And unless you really know in advance who's getting it, how many, you can't really intelligently give them out, and you can't protect each department to make sure they get the right ones. Now, maybe the lighting department said, just label it lights 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That's fine, as long as they, when they come, say, give me lights 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or 6. So this is a show that I recently did with Mac and Henry out in Las Vegas. The name has been changed to protect the client, but you may recognize some of the people on here. And the first part of this spreadsheet, across the top, I have labels for each of these columns. And these labels are used by the P-Touch editor to place information in the sheet. So if I change this name here, I will then have to make an edit in the layout of the sheet to make sure it shows up in the right place. But if I add sheets, add columns here, that's fine. They just won't be used in the layout, but I can add them later. So I've got basically important information like equipment numbers. I always label all the equipment numerically. So for instance, here's all of the HelixNet belt packs labeled BP01 through 40. A couple of them are labeled A, B, C, D. Those are were additions after the fact. But the importance of this number goes on the label. And when I'm collecting the equipment at the end of the show, as the equipment comes in, I take these labels and I stick them all on a big piece of cardboard in order. And when I'm done collecting, I can look and say, okay, BP 15, which was located at this place by this person, is not back. Give me a way of checking things in. Secondly, it gives me a way of referring to the equipment. So when Nick Fletcher calls me and said, my pack, could I change the channels on my pack? And I say, what is the pack number? He said, BP24. Bingo, I can go to the program and change it from production to Invis to whatever channel he wants. So I can edit each device separately. That being said, when I set up my HelixNet, which allows you to do a roll, one roll, and assign it to as many belt packs as you want, I always create a one roll for one belt pack, just like you're required to do in free speak, because it's just better to find it, even if it's a duplicate roll. So in HelixNet, I could create a roll for lighting that's the lighting, and then I just clone as many belt packs as I want, and actually name the belt packs by this number, BP 2432, and usually the first part of their first name. So this might be BP 33 JOSE, because they're limited in number of characters you can put onto the actual title of the belt pack. In this list also, I list the kind of equipment I'm packing. So here's HelixNet 2 belt pack. And if I go down on the list, there's the HelixNet 2X biscuit, and go down a little bit further, here's a 4X master and a base comms. And then right below that, I create a spreadsheet that has those same, here we have the load on my HelixNet system. So these four are power line, and this one is network. And so I looked through this list above here. These are the names of the node where I'm connecting that equipment, the node being one of the HelixNet bases, or maybe a switch somewhere. And I do a simple comparison. So a little formula, count if something in the output list on that column is true, total it up. So here I have a running total automatically calculated of my front of house power line 1, front of house power line 2, video power line 1, video power line 2, which is full up right now, and on the network. Total load on the whole system is 38, which helps me, one, keep aware of what load is on what of the two outputs on each of the HelixNets, and limiting my 60 belt packs, which is the maximum I can have in the data network on a HelixNet system. Then also in that line, here's a column called VIA. This spreadsheet was originally copied from a spreadsheet from the TD, which was organized for an RTS system. And he had dial-ups set up, A over B, C, etc., which related to the party line list. So I just added my party line list here at the bottom that came off of his paperwork, A, B, C, D, E, F, etc. So I could refer to it, and I just cut and paste his information into this row, put what kind of headset I want. Usually they're all lightweights unless it's somebody like Spot Ops that have double. And then over here on the right, for reference, I don't display it anywhere, but I like to know on this list for the future, if I come back to do this show, I won't necessarily have the HelixNet program still, because I may have to recreate it again for the next show. But I can look and see this was production over audio, or A over B. Now, this evolves a lot during the show. Often somebody will call and say, oh, could I have a different channel? Could you make my button momentary? Could you make my button not momentary, etc. So as the show evolves, every once in a while, not continuously, but every once in a while, I will go through this list and adjust it to be the as-built version of what the show is. So here's the 4 channels, or the 2 channels available on each of the HelixNet bell packs. Here's a 4-channel biscuit, which have 2 on the front, and then the shift page with 2. And down here, here's a couple of another biscuit and a couple of master panels for the stage manager. Then I also list whether or not they get a program feed. I usually put the program feed and associate it with production and maybe spots, because on the spot bell packs, they usually don't get production, but pretty much everybody else at bell pack gets production. And when you associate a program in with a channel, if they have the channel on that bell pack, then the little volume control on the bottom, or the arrow up and down keys on the top, control the level of your program feed, and technically it's writing on that channel into the bell pack and being separated out into a different bell pack. You could associate program with every single channel, and then it really doesn't matter what you put on a bell pack. Program will show up on the bell pack. Now, since I had 2 bases, and I didn't do it here, I could have put a program into one base, and on that base associated that program with certain channels, and on the second base take that program feed and associate with other common party lines between the 2 bases, but a different channel than from one base to other. So I could have a different program coming in for production coming into one base, and another program coming in for audio A2s, which might be the pre-fader Q bus of the front of house operator. So when he cues up the front of house mic, the A2s hear that mic in their belt pack, or their wireless belt pack. Very useful item. It saves a lot of time during sound checks, because as the A2 goes around and talks into a mic, the usual routine is you hit set, house hears it, monitor hears it, trucks hears it, and they say that. But the A2 can hear right away if he's live, because he hears that Q bus in his ear. Good trick to use. So if I go down a little bit further into the free speak section of this list, and there's no reason I could do this list all discontinuously, but since I'm sharing this list with different departments for them to add their information or whatnot, I do separate it into different things. So here's my free speak area, and I label them FS01 with a particular audio department. And here we've got, of course, the 4 channels on the free speak and the reply key. Now, usually on all the reply keys, I start out with a key that is called Pete, and I put that on all the reply keys. Now that's a button in the square hole on the side of your belt pack. And if you set up point-to-points between belt packs, or if you're tied into an Eclipse system and you set up point-to-points from a panel to a belt pack, the belt pack doesn't have to have that point to point on their panel. If they're using their 4 buttons for something else, they can reply to somebody that has a point to point using their reply key. Well, if I put this Pete channel, which I've set up to be a group where only I am listening to that group, I put the talk key on all of the buttons. So anybody can go press that key, and I program it so the key is in what's called talk and listen. So they can only listen when they're holding the key down. So when they press that key, I hear them, I respond, it comes to their thing. And if they're holding the key down, they can hear me, and therefore they can have a conversation with me about comms and say, on channel 1, could you give me XYZ? And this mostly is in when you're using a standalone free speak. When the free speak's connected to a matrix, and for certain power users, you can take 2 keys of their belt pack, make one an assign key. That's one of the functions you can put on a key. It just says assign, and make another key a scroll key. And in that scroll list, you can put a whole bunch of things, like all the other free speaks or every channel in the whole system. And that power user can press the assign, turn their volume control, and just scroll themselves through every channel in the whole system and pick who they want to talk to, including point to points to another panel, and then press it, and bingo, they go. So for the TD and the A2 and the A1 on a big show I did, they all had assigned keys because they were forever asking to talk to different people, and that saved a lot of my time. In a standalone system, we can't really do that. You've got to have another way. I get a little note from Brad Harris. He had a similar sad story with dollar store labels on a big show, and they took the labels. The labels came off easily, and after the show, they received a few cases of beer because it was easy to clean up. And I think that's
good news, actually, right?
That's really good news, and that's something you have to think about. And one of the things I like about this paper tape, I do it as a folded flag. I fold it like this. I fold just a little bit over part of the cable, and then I fold the top half of it. And this part of the label here says 100-foot coax. Then I take this cable and fold it down over it, and this part of the label says the name of the person who it's connected to. So I've used it to, so I have a little flag, and it's very easy to rip off the paper flag. Marley tape, no, this is different, I think. This vinyl tape, I bought Marley tape as well. It looks like Marley tape. It's meant for tying together vinyl labels, vinyl signs, and it has no name on it. So I'm going to have to go back and look and see where I bought it and see exactly what it is. That was from Brad Harris at that. And then Mark Serentakos said, if you associate program with multiple or all the channels, does the program level control operate for the entire usage station, or does it need to be adjusted for each channel with program assigned to it on the usage station? No, it's a single volume control. It doesn't matter if your program comes in 4 different things. You really only have one program in there. It just is a way for the product to travel. So you get one channel a program. Now, often people would want to have
gear-wise, that's a different question, right? How the system deals with program, right? At the pack, like maybe how Helix Net.
Well, he's saying if I associate program with every channel, how do you adjust it for each channel on the belt pack? You don't.
Correct.
You're adjusting it for the belt pack. It's not associated with the channel. Now, sometimes I put program on one of the main keys of the belt pack, either 4 on free speak or 6 on a Bolero, and I program that key either in push on to listen and push off to not listen, or in constant listen, and then they just have the volume control to adjust it. Usually people like to be able to push the button to turn it on, push the button to turn it off. And that's another program feature on PL channels. You can have always listen to a channel, or push the button to listen and talk, or push the button to listen and momentary talk. That's called dual talk and listen. And so a lot of power users, people that understand the equipment they're using, and I say power in a nice way, because a lot of wireless users are not very good technically. So they need to have something that's very simple and not confusing.
All right, sorry about that. I didn't mean to take us off topic. We'll hop back over to paperwork now, but we'll obviously talk about that one later.
Yeah, the in the paperwork, if you notice here that I made a column called sort. Sometimes if I wanted to look at this document in a different order, I would sort it however I wanted, by username, function, location, etc. But to get the whole thing back in the same order with all the blank lines and the titles and everywhere, I sort it by the sort column. Otherwise I'd mess everything up. Over here on the notes column, in this particular one, these numbers were the line numbers in the TD's original paperwork he sent to me. So if I needed to refer to it to figure out what he was doing and where I got that information, I could refer back to his document. Now, usually, a lot of times you get a document from a TD and it might just list, list generally everybody on the list. And then it might say 5 spots, or it might list dimmers 3 places, in general. And that's fine for them to do. But again, I separated out on this list so everybody's got a separate line. So, and I put them in a particular light channel. So here, for instance, on my BP 4 through 8 are the lights channel, the dimmers, LD, the programmer, the spot op, the 2 spot ops. Further down on this list, after free speak, I have a section called, here this was called free speak long range bell packs. Well, that means is in this venue, I had antennas back in the dressing rooms, and antennas in catering, and antennas in production, and a loading dock. So they could pretty much walk everywhere with it. And production all of a sudden decided, they were coming back to me over and over and over again and said, I need another bell pack. Well, all the 25 bell packs were assigned already. So I had to make them decide who they wanted to kick off, and it wasn't working out well. So we were able to get from the production house a couple of BTRs. Lo and behold, we went old school and put a couple of BTRs, not on fancy antennas, just literally sitting on top of my rack backstage right with their whip antennas. And we called them shorter range wireless. So it means they were covering the venue bowl, the production area. And we gave those, moved people over to there, like we had Rocky, a professional car driver, driving on this show. And well, he was only going 20 feet from where I was. So he didn't need to have a free speak to get everywhere. So this alleviated our ability without enough free speak. I mean, adding a bunch of free speak, we would have to do, let's say, maybe a 2.4 system in addition to the 1.9 system we currently had, and would have been much more expensive than BTRs. BTRs now, probably because of the free speak and Bolero systems, are now probably very inexpensive to rent because people don't want them, and they want, if you want them, there have to be a reason to want them. The reason to want them is maybe they don't cost very much. But that helped us out in this particular set. Once we had 8 more bell packs, there were never any more. That's about how many more we really needed on the show to satisfy everybody's needs. And further down, we had a couple of LQ systems. And I had one LQ located at front of house, which is where where base 2 was. And it had, here's base 2, which are the 4 2 wires in that helix net base. And here's the LQ, which is 8 channels there. And I only interfaced one feed, which is to my DJ there at front of house. And then at comms, I had 2 LQs. I had an LQ, which was, and pardon me for not knowing the exact part number, but this was an LQ that had 4 2-wires and 4 4-wires in one LQ, which is exactly the right device to share with a FreeSpeak standalone, because it has 4 2-wires and 4 4-wires. So they racked this LQ up with the FreeSpeak base, and I interfaced these 8 channels into the LQ. Plus, I interfaced the program and SA in because I wanted to feed program in there, but also wanted to have the ability to use the program and SA as a 9th input. Now, be aware that on a FreeSpeak system, if you put program and SA into one party line assignment, it automatically makes them a mix minus, so it's another 4-wire input. So you can use the 4 4-wire inputs, the 4 2-wire inputs, and the program and SA as COM inputs. In this particular case, I was feeding program into it. And here's the HelixNet I had located at the video rack, which here's the 4 2-wires around. In this particular HelixNet base, it had 2 2-wires named V2 and V4 at the video rack, but I also had an LQ with 8 4-wires, and those 8 4-wires plugged directly into the LMG CCU rack, and then the other 4 I used to plug into the BTR rack I added above. In the LMG CCU rack, they've done a very clever thing. They have all the 4 wires for all the 6 CCUs brought out on the back of the unit, and they're wired to plug directly into a Riedel rack, and Riedel has audio out on the middle pair and audio in on the first pair, not like this, where ClearCom normally has audio out on the middle pair and audio in on the second pair, which is straddling the middle pair. So what LMG has in their equipment drawer for the CCU rack are little 6-inch white male RJ45 to female RJ45 cables that are wired to work with HelixNet, with RTS, with several other different 4-wire connections that will adapt it on the back there. So if you're ever working with LMG and have a bunch of equipment to interface to their CCUs, they've got the parts in that little rack. Very clever way to do it. So after this spreadsheet, I created close to 2 weeks before the actual show happened, and people started adding stuff to it. And when they didn't add it, I would then call the lighting people. Please, could you tell me the names of the people in your crew, or call the production people. And like on this particular case, they had labeled the production belt packs FreeSpeak 1 through 15. Well, I wanted to have real names, so it took a little bit of coaxing to get them to get all the names. Now, this is in Google Sheets, which is terrific for sharing for that purpose. And I love it because as people edit live, I can see them editing on the screen, and I can edit from any of my computers or my iPhone, the same document, easily accessible. But to use this with P-Touch Editor takes one little extra step. Now, P-Touch Editor only uses Microsoft Excel sheets. Now, if you're using Google Sheets, you don't have to go out and buy Excel in addition, because what I can do with the Google Sheet here, right up on top, go to File, and I can download a Microsoft Excel compatible file, which is the Google Sheet. And if I start my P-Touch editor, which I'm sharing with you now, there's my P-Touch editor, and I've started with my program. And I'm going to open the file that I use for these labels. And it's going to say, because the file was used on another show at some other time, I can't find the New Orleans file. What should I do? Well, this is a pretty tricky thing with P-Touch Editor. If you ever open one of your massively edited name lists and do not associate a document with it and then accidentally save the file, you've erased all your work. Basically, you have to go back and create it all again. So now I'm going to say, yes, I want to find a new file to associate with it. And I'm going to go to my Dropbox on my Mac. I'm going to go to my show files. I'm going to go to the PST lunch document. And currently there's nothing in that document because I haven't downloaded. I'm going to go over to my sample comms list, to the download list I just shared with you, and download Microsoft Excel. And that will say save file. And that will, when I put it in the right place here, show files, PST lunch, save. I now have the file there. And in the Microsoft Excel format. So now I can just select that file and it will open the program with the file down here. Now I'm going to spread this sheet up a little bit more here, just so I can make it more information on the screen. And I'm going to move my pictures over here. Okay. Now, what I've got here is the Windows version of Intercom P-Touch labeler. It is, the advantage of it over the Microsoft is I can have 16 tabs underneath the graphics area, whereas in the Mac, I can only do one at a time. And luckily, I run Parallels on my Mac, because not only do I have this program, the P-Touch editor, but Riedel is a Windows program. Atom is a Windows program, so I need that interface to use those other programs. Now, the reason I like Parallels is it has a mode called, if I pull down my menu and look at the name, it has a mode called coherence mode. And when you're in coherence mode, it hides all of the Windows stuff from you, which I love because I don't want any of that Windows stuff. I almost throw up every time I have to deal with a Windows computer. And makes it look like it's all running on Mac. So here's my Windows program, P-Touch editor, in a window on my Mac. And as far as the world knows and me, it's a Mac. So now I've got a graphics section up top here and my spreadsheet from before. And I can spread this sheet out a little bit more so you can see some of the other things. And I'm going to make this notes column a little smaller. So I'm going to go to one of my things here. I've got a label called panel. Now you see all those graphics over there on the right. As I do shows, every show I work on, I will borrow a graphic from their website, copy it into this thing here. And this particular show right here, I was doing for Xbox. So I'll take that and I'll stick it in there. And I always wondered if the client like Xbox or CBS or Macy's or everything is going to look at their belt bag and say, who gave them the right to use our graphic in there? Well, it's their show. And ultimately, they say, gee, I love the fact that our name is on the belt pack. It really worked exactly the opposite of what I expected people to say. So here's a little label that I use a lot of different places. It can be used for panels. It can be used for belt packs. Right now it has 2 white windows in it, which can be channels on my HelixNet belt pack. So I can put this on a HelixNet belt pack. I don't have to use all those, but I can redo it. Now, right now this is saved as this is all individual little windows here, and they're all doing different things. So when I select different rows down below, you see the information is being shared and put in the right places. Now here I've got this is a label which I plan to use on a belt pack or a panel. So at the end of the label are 2 tabs which have information about this label, like the label number, the dial up, the name of the person that's going to be using it. You can basically change these all around. I can unpair this label by Control Shift G. And now I have this label right here. I can right click on it and, oh, you're not seeing, oh yeah, you are, okay. And change the merge field. So I'm going to change the merge field to circuit here. So now I've got that field is doing circuit, and down here in my list of things, the circuit column is blank. So now what if I want to edit this document down here, and change it? Well, I'm going to have to go back to my spreadsheet, to the sample comms sheet. And I'm going to have to edit in the document, which is Google Sheets. So I'm going to go to the audio engineer one here under circuit, and I'm going to call it 100 foot XLR. I'm going to put that in the column called circuit. Now I'm going to have to resave it as a document, a download, Microsoft Excel, save file, in the same place as I had before, which I have to go to show files, PST lunch, and there's the document. I'm going to select it again and save and replace the document. It's a little convoluted, but unfortunately you can't usefully edit in this screen. Now I'm going to have to go back to my PTouch editor. And in the editor, I'm going to have to go up to the top here, File. And when you save that document, if you had been watching the PTouch editor, the file blinks a little bit. You'd think it would blink and cut to the new one, but it's not. It's still showing the old one. So I have to go to Database, Change. If this command is executed, the object will be merged with the layout. I just hit Enter 6 times. So twice we'll select the same file as I used before. 3 times we'll select the labels that from that file. 4 times will show me how it's relating to what's on what hole. And the last time gets me back to the beginning. So I don't even think about it. I just go click 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and bingo, I've reloaded the new file. So now I've got a file here, which should have on BP4, this one right here, in the circuit column, that 100 foot XLR. So if I click on that column now I have in this spot on my label a document that says 100 foot XLR. So when I break this merged section apart and I right click on a document, one of the things is merge field. So basically when I created this document, as I typed these little text things here, I turned them on their side. So if I go to circuit here and over and click on layout up top, I can rotate that little document, which I'm not doing for some reason. Oh, it's merged with something else, but I can create, let's say, the red, this document and this document. I then can copy them and paste them 4 times on this document. So I've got this document. This is the part that's going to go on my belt pack. And this is the part that's going to go on my cable. One end of the cable at the user and the other end of the cable at the where I'm going to plug it in. Now the length of the paper I can change here. Auto length. I'm going to make the paper a little bit shorter and I'm going to print it. I'm going to print it to my printer. Now that didn't work out the way I wanted it.
Live demos, baby. Live demos. This is what we love about it. It's going to be all good.
Well, I'm going to get rid of this. I can't get back to my screen here. How do I get? I've lost. There we go. Phone booth. Well, I'm going to go back to my P-Touch editor and do this differently here. So I have a camera that shoots my printer, and that's what I attempted to go to. And I was displaying it on a program called Photo Booth, but that camera decided it wanted to take take a picture of it. So what I can do is switch my camera, my main camera you're watching me on, to the other camera. And now you can see this is my printer here. This is a belt pack I'm going to put a label on. I happen to be set up the way I normally set up my bench for doing shows. So I've got my TTI and my Firefox out here. And right above that is a screen which has all my other stuff. So I'm going to go to the print document and I'm going to print. And it's going to print that one document and cuts the paper. And now I have a document that looks like this. So in that document, it's the same thing as I had on the screen. I've got the label, which is going to go onto my belt pack, and I've got 2 labels that are going to go onto the cable. And what I do is I take a device, what's called a perforation tool, and I just drag it across the bottom of the label and drag it across in between the 2 labels. And now I'm going to put a protective piece of gaffer's tape on my belt pack, right on Charlie Booth's picture, the inventor of the belt pack. And I'm going to peel the back from my label so it's gotten to the perforation location. And I'm going to put it on the belt pack, rub it in really well. And now I hand this belt pack out to the people to take out to the field, and they have 2 perforated labels here stuck on it. So they can drop it where they want it. They can pull these labels off, and they can take each of these labels and put them on the cable. And I don't have an XLR here. Stand by. Why are there no cables?
Hey, Pete, I've got one here. I'm only a half hour away.
Okay, I got it. I got it from Mac. So this is like an XLR, but not. So they just take this cable and they go to the end. Now, I find that if you put it around the XLR connector, that's going to leave all this sticky stuff on the XLR connector. So you're going to want to do that. So I usually put it like just barely on, and I fold it over and then fold it over again, sort of to reinforce it. So the tab makes it all the way back down to the label. Now I have the name of the label. And usually what I do is this name could be the circuit where I plug it in. Like if I'm doing Riedel, this will be, you know, the port where that I plug it in. And this will be who's actually using it. And I put the name on both ends of the cable. And then after the show's all done, I can just pull it off like that. It's just a piece of paper label and it comes off very cleanly, or cleaner than usual. And I try to find the time when I'm striking to pull off as many labels as I strike, just to be nice to the shop. Because that's one of the things, although there have been years when I have gone into another show a year after I actually do the show for somebody and open up the cable box for their comms, and every cable in that box, it has my labels on it from the last show. Now, I don't know whether that means they never cleaned it off before, or maybe they haven't done any comm shows till I came again. I don't know. I have no idea. So there were a couple of questions here. Let me see up here. Gerald said, was it program and SA which produce a mix minus? Yes, on the HelixNet box, program and SA, when they're put into an assignment, like a party line, will be mixed minus automatically. Is there an equipment flow chart for this PL network? Well, I don't understand what you mean. Is there a chart of how this network is plugged together? You know what? The ideal thing would be for me to have taken a picture of the HelixNet screenshot, which does show you that. And let me see if I have a way to show you a HelixNet system here. Stand by. Let me see if I can log on to ClearComm's factory HelixNet system. Exactly. There should be crickets playing now.
There might be, but while you're doing that, Pete, I'm
Right.
just going to talk about your next session next week, Lunch with Pete, which is RF coordination. And I think one thing that's unique about your approach to a lot of things in life is documentation, documentation, documentation. And whether you're doing comms, whether you're doing RF coordination, managing that is so important. So I see you got the factory up here, so I'm gonna duck out and you can keep on going.
So this is we had it enabled yesterday to allow a backup possibility of connecting to a HelixNet system if Jonathan's system went down or something. This is actually a HelixNet located at the factory, and it doesn't really give me more. In the overview, I can see that it's a Helix base and it's at 2 LQs. And it doesn't really give me a diagram of how they're hooked together. If you look into the device, you can see that one of them, this one is the link master LM, shows right here. And you can see the names down below. So other than taking a screenshot of this, I normally don't create a diagram of the system I'm setting up, probably because I've done it so many times, it's ingrained in my brain already. So I know that things plug into here and that goes into there. And often, I think, I don't know whether other people have this experience, but it's very rare that I go onto a show where anybody but myself is doing comms. I'll go on the show, I'll put all the belt packs out, I'll run all the cables, I'll put all the panels out. You know, on a big show like maybe the Olympics or something like that, where we have a lot of different people that we'll have, their A2s will help me. Occasionally I'm on a show and the A1, Kelly Epperson, feels sorry for me and gives me one of his people to help put out belt packs. But comms is a very lonely world. What can I say? So this is the HelixNet picture. So I could certainly grab this picture and it could be used for that purpose there. The P-Touch printer I have is a QL-820 NWB. And it's a fairly expensive one. The best part of it is running on a brick, a universal power supply brick in the back. And almost every other printer you buy from them take 110 volt AC in on the back and do not have universal power supplies. I blew up at least 3 when doing shows in other countries, not remembering I needed to bring a transformer. So this one does have a universal power supply, and it has a lot of other connections in it. It's got, besides the power, it's got USB and networking. So I can run this on the network. And it also has Wi-Fi connection, so I can print wirelessly to it. But I pretty much always do it with the USB connection into my computer's dock to make the connection.
And Pete, you might mention that for less money is the QL800, which doesn't have the wireless, doesn't have the power brick.
Yeah.
But does have the USB connection, but prints the same.
Unit, the QL800 does have the same thing. Now the printer is a thermal printer, and if you're printing a lot of things, like on this document, if I select print all labels, like 30 labels, it'll get through about half of them, and then it will stop, and the little message on the screen will say cooling down, cooling down, cooling down. You have to just give it time, and eventually it will print. It's a pretty fast printer. So if you're printing out one, like it comes out pretty easily. I just do a Command P and hit enter, and bang, it comes out. So Frederico says you can't see how I put the gaffer tape on the belt pack. Well, it was just across just on the belt pack. Of course, it covered over some meaningful things like the volume control, but there's my commemorative Charlie Button 701 belt pack. He was the inventor of the ClearCom belt pack, and I just put it on there to work for me. Now, where you want to put it depends on where you're using it. You pretty much decide. When I'm doing Riedel panels, don't tell anybody this, but I like to put them on the Riedel panel so it covers up the LED that tells them their mic is on. Often, if I'm doing a listen in to a Riedel panel, it'll turn on the little blue LED that tells the people their mic is on, and somebody inevitably will say, "How come my mic's on?" So I just take care of that, and I make sure I put the label over the blue LED. But I usually I have on several shows, because I put people's name on there and what job they're doing and the logo of the show. I've had people, notably prompter operators and video operators, take the labels off and save them on their show book because they wanted to have the label for their personal souvenir. So they certainly appreciate it, the labeling. And it's a lot of work to do this. And I find that, that it's worth it for the promotion, for the professionalism that that it brings to your job.
And it's also a way of, because you've created that whole document that notates everything,
Right.
it's created documentation of all your paperwork automatically.
Yeah, incidentally, I've turned off my camera and switched it to the camera shooting at the printer. So that's why you can't enjoy my my face. The tape versions, there's a lot of tape versions, Mr. Foley, but the ones that are labeled not permanent basically are labeled don't stick to anything. I found for a while, I found on these paper labels, if I put them on gaffer's tape, they would, as the show went on, this would sort of peel off on the corners. So sometimes on belt packs, I will put them on gaffer's tape. I'll put them on, but I'll leave a little space in the label. I'll put another strip of gaffers on either side. It's a little messy, takes a little longer, but that holds it on a lot better. This tape is the only brand they make, only one they make, which is for this color. It comes in this one size here, DK 2251. Can't really see that with the focus there, but it's a DK 2251, and it's labeled white paper tape. Of course, it has red too. So I wish they would make other sizes in other colors. I held off buying this paper tape, hoping they would come out with tape that was white, black, and green, but no such luck. What can I do? They just obviously don't see the world the way I see it. But for this to work, it has to be plugged in. I forgot about that small detail. So this is pretty much the whole process I've done here. Let me see if there's any other questions somebody wanted to ask. Oh yeah, you want to see what other kinds of labels I had on here. Now, often, I edit the documents to be different labels, and I don't always save them. So I'm, for instance, if I go back here, there's a BTR 700. Well, I haven't done a BTR 700 belt pack for a long time, so it's back in the yellow.
You have to go back and share your screen, not your camera.
P-Touch editor. Okay, great. So now I'm back to that, but I have to change my camera here. Way too many controls here. Why don't I have a video department doing this? Great. So this was my BTR 700. It's made to fold over the edge of a BTR 700, which is a single channel belt pack. And if you see on the left here, there's a row called TX, and RX. If I go to the BTR 800 one, you'll see there's a TX, R1, and R2. When it's folded over the edge of the belt pack, and you hold it to read these things here, TX1 and RX1, I would then, in my database, I would cut and paste the coordinated frequencies from my IAS into the document, and the three frequencies would show up right here. And if you put this on right above this is the door to program your BTR belt pack, so you'd have them right in front of you. So these are flipped over so they read well when you're looking at the door on the back of the belt pack. But again, I haven't used BTRs in a long time, so this label has never been converted into black and white mode. Here's a BTR 325, which was converted into that mode. This one I decided to only, I'm going to move this over a little bit so I can move it over so you can see the whole label. I just selected everything on the screen and moved it over. And then I would select the paper size and make the paper go bigger to cover the whole thing. So this is for a BTR. It's actually not for a B. It's for a not BTR. It's for a BP325 RTS belt pack. So here's the two buttons. Actually, you know, this has been edited along the way. It's actually for a C3 belt pack because the C3 belt packs has these 2 buttons in the middle. So again, here's the same thing, label and the label over here. Cable was just a simple version of the cable one. If I only need to do a cable. Panel was the one I showed you before. FreeSpeak has had many iterations over the years. This used to be the FreeSpeak belt pack I would put on belt packs when I felt I had to label the whole belt pack. Let me move this to the back. So I had a belt pack with shadows on it and stuff like that. But then I realized there's no need for me to do that in FreeSpeak and on Boleros because they have a nice little display that tells you what your readouts are. So I stopped doing these belt packs for the sides of the FreeSpeak, and I just sort of moved those things out of the way. And this is a document which I've used for other purposes as we went along. Again, I sort of edit them every time I need them. Here is one that I just used to label tables. Here's this one for a C3 RTS clear Riedel belt pack sitting on a desktop. So these channel A and channel B's would be the label of the channels. Now, in this particular instance, this label has gotten disconnected from the document. So if I look at this one here and I unmarry it, let's go over to this one here. Where is it? G, right click. Well, it's not there. But if I wanted to add, if I have a document like this and I wanted to add a new thing to it, I can select one that actually exists on the document, copy and paste it. Now I've got another one that I'm going to move down here and I'm going to resize it to fit in this box the way I want it. I'm going to right click on it and I'm change my merge field to channel B. And now it picks the merge field out of the channel B column there. I then can double click on it and I'll do my alignment center and say, okay. So now I've created a new button with a new reference into the document just by copying one that was on my document already. Also, I can select this screen right here and using this little color section down here, I can select what I want the text to be, the color of the text, what I want the background to be, black, black, black. Why isn't it going black? Why, maybe it's this one here. That's it. That's the circles, the edges around it. And this wants to be what's in there. Oh, you know what? I have to go to this here and in the drawing, I have to make the pattern in the middle of this box a pattern like a pattern like a fill like that. Now I have a pattern in that box. And there's my pattern, which happens to be red, controlled by this. So I can make my background black and I make my letters white. So you've got those 3 controls you can do. This is a black background around the entire document here, one giant black one. Now, using all the colors in your document makes your printer run a little bit slower, but not significantly. The printing out this printer is fairly fast. Again, this was an NBC show, but if I'm out doing an IBM show, I can grab my IBM. You've got to edit your documents, your graphics a little bit so they're on black background to help you. So on the C3 hung up one, it just rotated these boxes so they're readable when it's hanging up. C3 on a desktop, they're readable when it's sitting on a desktop. So the key thing about this is the templates evolve all the time as I do a show, and it's no big deal about, you got a new device you have to label, make it for your label. This was the BTR HME 850, which was a wireless. It had 4 talk buttons organized like this. And here's a 502. Actually, this one was reorganized to be a channel selector on a walkie-talkie. So I took this one and I reorganized it to be that. Here's one that is a label for a mic to go on the bottom of a mic or on a console. So you can use these any way you want. You can take a blank sheet and you can draw things on it, like a rounded box here. And I can right click on that rounded box and I can go to properties and I can make its fill pattern be something like this, let's say. And then I can go over to paper. This particular paper is in the black and white mode here. I want to switch this whole page to black and red. It's saying 2-color mode is selected. So now I'm in a black and red. So I have this square with red edges, which I can choose the line size in the document here, color, position, style. I go to a bigger line size, like 2.5 point. And then the middle section here, even though it's a shaded graphic, I can make it be the shaded graphic of the color. So it gives you a little bit of flexibility in your design. The main thing is you've got it linked to your spreadsheet. Now, there is one other thing you can do. If I go to that change button in the file menu to change my database spreadsheet, I'm going to go ahead and change it. Now on this screen, I don't appear to be able to do it. I think it's because it's open in somewhere else. But down here on the bottom, you could click on create a copy that can be edited and connect to the original file and show editing. That will get you in a mode which will allow you to click on the bottom and edit it. Now, you see what happened is I lost my connection there. This is very important to remember. Do not save this document because you will save it without any database connected to it. I just want to go out, not save it, and reopen it, which will have the file associated with it. If you save it, once you accidentally remove it, you will save it and end up erasing all of your work.
Hey, Pete, we've gotten a request for you to go through the bottom there and kind of scroll through the database at the bottom so we can see how the labels change, you know, and because it's a pretty powerful database management tool, right? And
right, let me go over to here, the panel one, and I'll zoom in a little bit here to the panel, and I'll open this panel up a little bit. So now if I start here at BP1, so here's BP1, which is John, then DJ. Let me close this a little bit so you can see some of the other things here. I had a column in this database, which is called Notes on Wireless Changes. I had some of the wireless free speak on this show that were used for one department for one part of the show, and because we didn't have enough to go around, another department on another part of the show. So that's what this column I make smaller here is. So here's the equipment, there's the node, there's A to B, what kind of headset is plugged in. So here we're on this first line right here, audio, and up on top you see, here's the date and time I printed it, 3/27/20, 3/19, 13/19. It helps me make sense of all the piles piling up on my desk, which is the one I need now. Here's my dial-up. Here's the section via here, right in here. Now, if I select this box right here, there's via. If I right click on it, you can see change merge field, it's via. So here I have what type of equipment, location of the belt box is it here. Right click, go to merge field, location. So if I hand this belt pack box to someone, the crew knows, okay, it's going to go up front of house. They're going to have this kind of piece of equipment, and it's going to have a lightweight headset. So they have all the information they need to go out and place the headset. On the bottom of this list, I put a note, which everybody can read, because on the FreeSpeak HelixNet belt packs, the volume control on the bottom is your program level. It's a little rotating volume on the bottom. So adding this helped save a few questions. So if I go through down to a couple more here. Now, see, these are all for HelixNet. And they're all changing different ways. Now, if I go down in this list to FreeSpeak, I use the same label for FreeSpeak, but I'll go up to the paper screen and I'll shorten the paper length because I don't need a label that labels the cable for the FreeSpeak. So now I just have a label for the belt pack, and I go down here on the belt pack, and it's showing me the same information. What kind of belt pack, wireless, A over F are the channels that are on it. If I go down further to somebody that had 4 channels on their belt pack, who had 4 channels on their belt pack? This one right here, deck manager, ADJK. Now that doesn't mean anything to the user, but it's a note for me. Those are the PL channels I put on this belt pack. They can look right on the top of their belt pack and read their channels, and it'll basically be labeled what they expect it to be labeled. I do save all my logos in another file called logos, but it's very easy to get a logo into here. So I can take this Xbox One out here and I can insert picture from file, and I can go to my Dropbox to where do we put our logo? In our file?
It is in logos. Practical Show Tech. Go to logos. And I know it's a pretty crazy idea. And for you folks at home, obviously, we're not sharing the entire desktop. That's so that we can all work again after this is done. But, you know, so Pete's sharing, obviously, the P-Touch editor window right now. I'm going to click on for a second here, Pete. I think one of the things that I'd like to point out to folks, and these are great opportunities we have, and that is, what is your Pete Erskine experience going to be when people work with you? You know, myself, early on in my when I was working, I decided, well, what's the Kelly Epperson experience when somebody works with me? Maybe that includes the tools you carry. Maybe that includes how you communicate. All of this goes together to create an experience that people remember, that people want to work with you. not because you bring all this stuff with you and they don't have to pay for it, but rather you're a valued team member because you come prepared. And you know,
Well, that's a big part of it. I rarely ever have somebody say, "Oh, I love your labels. It's really great," but it makes a difference in their subconscious imagination of who I am and what I am and when I do it. And I have had people say when I come back to a show after being away from a year or something, "Oh, great, my panel's labeled the way I wanted it," you know, things like that. But uh, the experience you have in comms is, it's really important before you ever get on site to personally make contact with all the key people. Call the lighting designer, call the set designer, call the audio people, talk to them all about what their comm needs are. Because 99% of the time, the list that the TD gave you of what he thinks everybody needs isn't what they want. I mean, I'm sure every time you call somebody, say, "Oh, I need 20 Bolero packs for my lighting thing." And there will be a day when that will come. I've been on a show where the only wireless on the entire show, I mean, the only intercom on the entire show was wireless. It just was easier to do the show that way. That's what the TD wanted. We did 50 free speak belt packs, 12, 25 2.4 and 25 1.9s. And this was for the Macy's Day Parade on the street on 34th Street. And
That's what we do on the Tonight Show remotes. The entire show is wireless. The truck has an Atom
Yep.
system that's all panels, but
Yep.
we interface, and there's 40 Bolero packs. All the cameras are wireless. All the electricians are wireless. There's no wired packs whatsoever on the show. Stage managers, of course, but yeah, the entire thing is RF.
And the great thing with Bolero, if you're into a Riedel system, or Free Speak if you're into an Eclipse system, is you can share point to points and do stuff like that. On Major League Gaming, we were doing these shows every couple of months, which was a Lion TV truck with an Atom system and a second fly pack of video for a second simultaneous show called the B Stream, which was all on Atom panels. And we interfaced Free Speak to the truck. Now, the problem with that we found was we needed Free Speak belt packs for the production people, audio and stage managers and stuff like that. And we needed Free Speak packs for the referees and the judges of the game. And although there's a little bit of cross channel communication between those, they were totally separate. So with one Free Speak base, with the ability to, with a lot of finagling, get 10 channels into, we couldn't quite do it. So what we ended up doing in the later iterations of the show was put two Free Speak bases, sync together with the sync cable, and we still had less than 25 belt packs out there, but that gave me 10 channels into one system, 10 channels to the other, some of them common. And so one was the referee team and one was the production team. And that allowed me many, many more channels into it. Now, if I had an Eclipse system, as we have in some shows, that problem goes away because all the channels in Eclipse are available to the belt packs.
So let me ask you this, Pete. We you know, in show prep, you touched on the two big things, which is obviously paperwork preparation, which is a form of communication. We talked about discussing with, whether it's the TD production manager, whoever that is, what they think your starting point should be for wireless PL and wired positions, things like that. And then we populate that down on through our crew. But what are the things in your box, non-RF related, right? We're just talking comms, we're talking A2 kind of things. What are some of those key things you think that people should have with them? Now, you're a heavy packer. That's what I appreciate about you. Stan Hunter, another friend of mine, another heavy packer, and I appreciate that. That's preparation. I like that.
Yeah.
Go ahead. But the thing I guess I'm wanting people to think about is, what are those tools that you should be prepared for? Not necessarily the tools you're being paid for, but the tools that you want to be prepared with and have that go to making that experience. Again, a lot of this is about, as I'm prepared, people are going to call me more often. Now, again,
Right.
am I billing for every single thing I'm carrying? No, but that's not the point. The
No.
idea is that I have an experience and I'm going to work more. And by working more, the cumulative benefit is that I'll end up making more money at the end of the day, more, or maybe I'm working with people I really want to work with instead of just having to take every job. So I see you have a couple of things. Oh, look at that. We have our BU meter.
Yeah, little piece of audio history there. The
That's right.
DBX81W wide range meter.
Now this meter came out in the 60s or 70s, I
70s.
think, 70s, and it
Yeah,
is one meter,
discontinued in the 80s.
one meter that goes from minus 70 to plus 10 on a single meter. So I can plug in an SM58 and see it bouncing around at mic level down here around minus 50. Now I have bought these as often as I can find them on eBay. I've got about 6 in the back because a couple of them have died along the way. They're not available anymore. They're very, very rare. And in fact, I don't buy them when they're rare because the people want to charge a lot for them. But this one I bought last and it was $12 on eBay.
I know who I'm bidding against now. This is good.
Yeah, the one I bought was $100 on eBay.
There we go. There we go. Well, the advantage, what I do with this is when I'm using a Riedel system, I plug it into an audio output of my comm panel so that anything I listen to on my panel, I see on here. Now on the Riedel panel, if you double click the master volume control, every output volume control automatically sets to a standard level. So then I can double click, turn off all the things I don't want to look at, and only measure one person or one PL channel. And generally, comm comes in around minus 10, around here. So sure, I can just listen to the comm, and if somebody sounds too loud, turn them down. But after a while, my ear gets really tired and doesn't hear the loud anymore. But I can always see the loud. And in Riedel, on all the panels, there's volume controls. In FreeSpeak, there's volume controls. In Bolero, there's volume controls. So the most often, I feel like I'm mixing the comms. And I wish there was a way to put a board out with all the comm channels on it and I could mix it. Because
well, there is, but I'm taking that away from you because I always joke that when I got Pete on the show with me at the organic Riedel mixer, I come in each morning and he'll update me on the software revs overnight. Tweaks and change made to our show overnight, and it's and I love that, right? Because you're never satisfied, right?
Well,
there are some points where we just need to be happy and we need to be content because we need to get the show on, but the never satisfied or a little discontentment, not a bad thing, is it, Matt?
Yeah. Now,
I actually did a show where I had a console mixing the comms.
Well, that was great. You were running all your comms through your console on another layer. That's the perfect way to go.
Yeah, I mean, it's 300 input console. There was plenty of routing through the console.
That's always a little dangerous.
It also made it very easy to fax the console because somebody says, I don't hear the director. I could queue up the director on the console and say, I hear him, go look at your 4-wire interface and you're clearly not plugged into the right hole.
That's a little dangerous because you've got all your comm in your show and you got to be careful not to route it right place. Right. Early on in the TV business, Fred Friendly tells the story of one of the first shows he did on TV where they decided they were going to do a broadcast of a lot of different places around the country. And they were going to open the show with a split screen of the Statue of Liberty and the Golden Gate Bridge, which was like, this was amazing. How can TV do this? And they went through this whole show. And at one point they cut to a picture of Mount Rushmore. And clear as day, obviously right on the audio channel, you hear the stage manager say, cue the buffalo.
Right.
You gotta be careful.
That's right. We don't want that. And I saw a comment that came up that is a good clarification here. You know, we're not suggesting. I'm not suggesting. I'll speak for myself. I'm not suggesting that folks should build up these big road kits and absorb a lot of the expense that the comm company, frankly, should be providing in a work box, right? But that's where
Yeah.
communication comes in. Isn't that right?
If I were bringing equipment, like I know when Henry just noted that he brings a couple of kits that are way heavier than mine, with splitters for all his RF and filters and that kind of stuff. That kind of equipment, which directly is hardware being used on the show and not something that he just has to make his life easier. He definitely charged for it as a kit, and that's standard in the industry. You have kit charges for your stuff. If you bring a camera to a show, you're charging for that camera, obviously. But for the most part, everything in my case is stuff that I like to bring because at some point on some show, I said, oh, I wish I had so-and-so. I wish I had something. I wish I could do this. And that's why I pretty much have it. And my 1600 Pelican is basically carefully designed to be 50 pounds.
Right.
So it travels with me. Now, there's another thing I have is a fairly high-end Fluke cable IQ network meter. This will not only test my Cat5 cables, but I can press the test mode and test their speed capability. So if I plug in a Cat6, it'll say I can do gigabit. If I plug in a Cat5, it'll say only 100K. So this will tell me the length of the cable and if there are any breaks in it. And this is just a box that has network connections I put on both ends, or I can just plug in this end without anything on the other end. And if it's plugged into a switch, that switch port will start flashing.
Right.
So this is my Cat5 tester.
Right. So a basic Cat5 tester though is pretty reasonable. I mean, like in my kit, certainly I carry a Q box, which by the way makes an excellent biscuit for listen only. You know, and 2-3 switch, and guess what? I can listen to either RTS. Many a times I've the ME in the lighting department be like, hey, can I have a biscuit? Right. And that's a quick, fast, easy. Here's a couple ones that Ryan Trefethen brought up. Audio Man ISO for people living in a 2-wire world. That's almost essential. If you were putting a BTR with an RTS system, that's almost a necessity, right? And then also the DV box 2. I love that box. I carry that one as well because I can do analog and AES in there. Those are really, you know, powerful tools to have, and in some ways could say are necessary component, and those kind of things. But again, I saw a note here that, you know, communicating with the vendor, helping them build a good quality kit up. I've seen some just stellar work boxes from Riedel to even 2-wire work boxes. It's worth that investment if you're a vendor. Put it into there. Quick shout out to Mark Martinetti and Digital Black. There's a guy that, you know, builds up the kits, right? You know, and there are a number of other people. I'm just pointing him out specifically just because those are the kind of people that say, you know what, the behind the scenes pieces, the bits are just as important as the big items that are laying on the table. And we could go round and round forever on how that's costed out. But go ahead, Matt.
Yeah, I was just going to say that a lot of the stuff we've been carrying for years, I've stopped carrying because it's just become too heavy, and our world is changing, and I've found new things that are more important for me to carry. And a network tester is one of them. Triplet has one that they label Byte Brothers. that's under $100. It won't do network certification, but it will do a wire map and a speed test. It will rate the cable for you, but if you're an installer, it's not qualified to. It'll do network qualification, I guess, and not certification. I'm not positive about the exact words. The certification is important to installers.
Sure.
It's not for us. Just knowing the cable works is important to us. And it's under $100, whereas certification one is thousands and thousands of dollars. And also now I've started carrying fiber tools, which Pete has the same ones. Actually, he's right there. That's a fiber microscope that Pete's showing right now, which is a little over between $500 and $600, depends on the time of day on eBay. You know, and it's not the most convenient fiber microscope to use, but it works great. You know, you get a look at the fiber, and if you took a look at the fibers that you're using every day, you'd be appalled. They look terrible. You have to clean them and clean them and clean them to get to a clean state. And there's another one. That's a
deference to Rom, who invented this. Rom Rosenblum at Clearcom invented this shape device. Clearcom holds the patent on it in the United States. A Q box is about $210. This is $280, including DHL shipping from Italy. So it's not a whole lot more expensive. And this does everything, almost everything that a Q box does. If I turn it on, it comes out. Now it's putting out tone out the top, and it's measuring tone in the bottom. If I flip this button, it's now listening to the tone out the bottom, and I can switch it to a tone. So this is doing pretty much everything that the Q box does, except testing intercom. On the Q box, when you plug an intercom into any of the plugs, the voltage will show up on pin 2 and 3. Well, this doesn't do that. This will show you 45 volt phantom voltage on the input, but not audio voltage. But it is such a nice little tiny package. It's just for sending audio out and audio in.
It's also pretty easy to build a tool that will test those intercom voltages with a couple of LEDs and a XLR barrel, which many truck A2s have already built those that they use for checking 2-wire PL.
This is called the Sound Bullet, and it's a rechargeable device. Recharging only takes about 10 minutes. So, and I've never had it go dead on a show. Of course, I don't leave it on all the time. One of my critiques of it was it doesn't auto off after 10 minutes, which is what I'd prefer. But then you probably turn it on and go to the other end of the cable to listen to it, and then it would go off before you ever got there.
Right, and it's rechargeable, which is always, you know, it's got pluses and minuses, right? And you know, unfortunately, there's always something. I saw a question here. What was the biscuit Kelly recommended? What I was talking about biscuit wise was how I use the Q box as a listen only biscuit. When I just need a quick, you know, on a 2-wire intercom. Technically, I could do it on a 4-wire as well, because it just listens to, you know, the biscuit box is a dangerous little tool, because that's the, I call it the get me fired box. Not so much me, but the people that are talking on it that don't know they're talking on it and are talking about the client on it. It's a.
Pete, stop drumming on the table.
I like to know where open speakers are when I can, right? Not because I'm, you know, hopefully always trying to think about what I'm saying. We all, you know, by midnight though, and we're, you know, it's dead horse walking, you know, and you've beat that horse and beat that horse, that we've rehearsed it and rehearsed it and rehearsed it, right? And you know, our filters start to break down a little. So, but overall it is really convenient. So just when we remember COM is common when we're talking about the consoles. I know a few people that are using X32s, so they're using the rack mount version, and they're just mixing comms in it. They're not doing anything else. Right. A great way to like we were talking about yesterday, for cameras, things like that. Well, that's not stuff you're necessarily going to carry in your kit. Now, I do know there are a couple people that like to carry as much as they can, but as a whole, finding that kind of that sweet spot, somewhere where you're comfortable that I got the tools I need to do the job. I have the tools that make me comfortable to do the job. And then I have the tools that when I'm talking with the vendor I'm working for in some cases, or working with in other cases,
Yeah.
ensuring that, hey, do we have all the stuff we need in an appropriate quantity to deal with things that come up. So let's see here. I think we're kind of getting to the
Henry
bottom.
did say kit charge is not standard in our industry. Very hard
Correct.
to charge for your equipment in the industrial show industry. On the other hand, film cameramen standard always have a kit charge because they bring so much stuff with them.
And television too. On an NBC Universal time card, there's a slot to put in your kit charge.
Yep.
So that's where we have to do some, some balancing there of, what's the have to have, what's the nice to have, and then what's the other pieces that if they fall out of that checkbox, because we don't have that in the industrial market. Right. How do I now create a better relationship with the companies I'm working with to, encourage them to have those items? So
I don't want to give anybody the wrong information. Rom does not manufacture the sound bullet. He invented it for Clearcom, who elected not to manufacture it because they figured they would only sell 500 or 600, and they're in the big comm business. This is made by a company called Sonnect Audio. So if you either Google Sound Bullet or SONNECT Audio, you can order it. And it's a very nice guy, but he basically builds them 50 at a time at his house. So it's not a big manufacturer, and it's a terrific product. And please give him a call, because it's definitely a product that I always carry now.
So we've got a few more questions that kind of fell out of the normal, area of, show prep and kits like that, things like Helix net talkers and balancing levels, with some of the gear.
Yeah, so I wanted to talk about that.
You want to talk about that? So just so you know, we're going to go, we're kind of, going all over. We're willing to stay on as long as people want to, but let's go ahead and talk about that one, Pete.
That's one of my pet peeves, and I noticed that Rom explained that our famous inventor Charlie Button kiboshed the volume control setting in the HelixNet system, and he's going to get an email from me now, because I don't care to have a volume control setting in my HelixNet settings. I want a mic level setting, and I don't care if he makes it plus or minus 3, 6, and 12. He's got to put it back in there, because there's literally no way to balance a bunch of people on a HelixNet channel.
Well, you dissimilar headsets, right? I mean, that's really
even with different talking, but even with just different headsets, right? Even the same headset,
now, right?
Right, and yeah. All you can do is move it away from their mouth, or put them on. There is a a little bit of adjusting between soft and loud dynamic thing, but it really needs to have a volume control. And I understand where he's coming from, because when I first started out in comms, a belt pack did not have a volume control. It was all the same level. And then an RTS BP325 belt pack doesn't have a volume control. And that became the standard level in my whole intercom system. I'd match everything else to match the BP325 or the belt pack. This belt pack actually probably does have a volume control, and it messed things up when they came out with the programmable belt packs. You used to have a little menu on them to program them. You could change the gain of the mic, and it was all wrong. It was not the right way to deal with it. But in the right hands, having volume control levels on your belt packs is really, really, really important. And there's no way to deal with that in the Helix net.
Right. Well, we'll see, and you never know. You know, these are brave new times, right? And that's the beauty of firmware. That's the beauty of community and this kind of communication that we have, hearing from everybody. You know, feel free to share those back to the various factories when you think about these things. That's another thing I would encourage people to do. You can reach all those support outlets, whether they're ClearCom, whether they're RTS, whether they're Riedel. These folks are listening. They're hearing the market, and yeah, Pete has a very powerful voice in the marketplace. You have an equally powerful voice in the marketplace as users, right? And you can touch in there, you can connect with them, you can share that, and enough people, they see these things, changes happen. And I would encourage everybody to keep doing that. Pete, do you see any other questions that we didn't talk about that we
I
really
looked through
want
the
to?
whole list. I didn't see anything. I did want to say that, let me log in here for a second. I'm going to put on my website, there is a link for this whole thing I did today in there about doing labels. But I'm going to put in that link. Oh, I can't get on. Okay. I'm logged on my other computer, so I can't get on. But in the download section on my website, there is a link for labeling your belt packs. And I'm going to put this file that we just showed today and an XLS version of the database file in that link there, so you can look at it yourself. Now, everybody I know who's used this, from Joe Foley to Tim Kepner, they build all their own labels to have their own look, and that's
Absolutely.
fine. That's what makes it a great program. You can make your own look.
Right. No, exactly. And the other thing to consider is, you know, when we're working for other vendors, remember their branding as well. Simple things like that bring a lot of value. You know, when we're working for somebody, we're working for them. Yeah, obviously most of us are independent contractors, but we're working for people, and take those opportunities to build their brand. And when they send the proper tools for the job, you know, give them the kudos for that. Whether that's on LinkedIn, or whether that's on your Facebook, or whether that's just by how you manage their gear on site, right? That word of mouth is so important, and that's what encourages people to take those next steps and make those investments. And those are hard right now. We're going to be, for a while, you know, my impulsiveness wanted to go on to the eBay and Amazon as Pete was talking and going, yep, I need to put that in my workbox. Yep, I want that. And yep, I want that. And then I remembered my wife was at the top of the stairs, and so I didn't. But the point is that we're just getting our list together. And maybe, like Mac, I think you brought up a great point. Sometimes we got to go through our workbox and we got to say, you know what? I don't need that one anymore. Or I do a little more here.
Until your next show, after you've taken it out of your box and I wish I had brought it with me.
I get that. Yeah, I think, you know, the big takeaways here is in digital comms, it's going to be a little more difficult to quantify things the same way we did in the 2-wire world. Is the 2-wire world still, we're still going to be living in that for a few more years. Okay, so don't get rid of your Audio Man ISOs. You're still going to be able to grab a Q box to listen to it. As we move more into digital, thinking about how I listen to the pack is going to be important, whether that's a 4-wire module, the same way in RF we want to look at the output of an antenna divider, right? How do I find a place where I can listen? Cat5 cables, Mac, you hit it right there. That is the XLR. So the way we tested our XLR cables, we should be doing the same exact thing with Cat5 cables, because there's nothing more frustrating than getting in, trying to figure out what a network problem is, only to find out you had a bum cable, right? And
Right.
yeah, the cable testers don't have to be expensive, but they do, you know, you need the remote, drop it on there, boom, you're good to go, right? Because we're gonna see a lot more Cat5 snakes to front a house. You know, at this point with Dante and other systems, I'm running maybe what 2 pairs between front of house and back stage right now, and that's usually because somebody wants a speaker timer circuit, right? If it wasn't even for that, I could probably not run a snake. So simple tools, look at those, evaluate. Sometimes you need more, sometimes you need less. Anybody got any closing thoughts that they want to share before we wrap up?
Or any last questions?
Any last questions? I see Foley, I've been building multiple work boxes based on roles being asked of me. Interesting. All right, so more of a kind of a custom approach to that. I'm going out on this project. I know that I'm going to have this platform I'm on. I want to come ready for that. So that's actually a really good point there.
Yeah, I have a Pelican case, which is my COM case, and I have a Pelican case, which is my RF case.
Yeah, and Jeff Jones, that's the same thing he said, right? Rearrange kit by job requirements, position on that job and by vendor, right? We know that sometimes I got to go with a few more things than maybe I think I should have to, but I want to eventually leave the ballroom.
He does?
See.
I don't understand that idea.
I know it's crazy because once I found out that not everything was, you know, sometimes you stay to fix something. You're not necessarily paid to fix it, but your life's going to be a lot better that next morning if you fix it, right? So
yeah, usually when schedules are given to you and the call is 8 a.m., the tech manager is not going to balk at all if you say, I want to come in at 7 to set some comm levels. He's going to let you come in at 7 because
well, that's a good point.
That's the kind of things that he doesn't want you doing when everybody's there on comm.
Right, right, and that preparation sometimes, and that's the communication to say, hey, you know what? I know you're saying 8 a.m. for the crew call. If you want everybody on headset at 8:15, 8:30, like projection, I need to be there half an hour before, right, to have that prepped. And that's not I don't think everybody expects that to be free. I think they expect to be connected with and said, hey, this is what I need to do. Now, if you got done at midnight and you were going to break into short turn because you wanted to come in the next morning to get headsets together, I'm probably going to want to have that conversation with the powers that be on that, right? And they might.
I have done that. I have done that with the intention of not charging for short term.
Right.
Just regular
maybe
overtime.
It's an hour of OT, right? But the point is you communicate that, and that goes back to their I think I think we're Mac, somebody was asking, what was that Ethernet checker for about $100 that you use?
Yeah, it's actually made by Triplet, and it's a sub brand called Byte Brothers. I forget the
Brothers.
actual model number of it, but it was under $100. Might have been even as low as $60. I don't actually spend quite a few years since I bought it, but yeah, it's not as fast as a $3,000 Fluke certification meter, and it won't allow you to write a certification report because that's not what it is. But it does a wire map, it does a length calculation, it will notice any how far away in the cable any fault is. You know, it does a TDR or whatever. I'm not sure that's the right term, but it does the reflection measurement. Which is really as much as we need. So it's been working fine for me, and I'm not in a position to spend $3,000 on a Fluke.
Right, exactly. You know, I got this Resitoner here, little module. I think I got this at Fry's for 50, 60 bucks, right? It's nice and it's light. You know, it does what it needs to, you know. I got my little Klein crimper here. One thing I love about it is it got A and B pin out on the side. What I don't like about it, it's heavy, right? So when you're thinking payload capacity, right, and you're trying to hit that magic 50, that's a different story. When you're going into a really large project, communicate with your vendor, communicate with your client. And if you need to ship ahead, you know, if you ship ground, those rates are actually pretty affordable. And with some good communication, people will appreciate what you're trying to do for them. And maybe at some point it opens up a different conversation around kit billing, but at minimum, it helps them understand, you know, and you can talk to them about, you know, if they'll cover those shipping charges, don't carry those costs, right? So then when stuff like this happens, like the market, you know, downturn we're experiencing right now, you haven't, you know, you don't have all this money floating around either, right? So just simple things. And again, most of this comes to communication, communication, communication. And I think one last question that we should take, Pete, because it actually is right on with why we even started this one, and you may have talked about, is from Jordan Smith. How do you prevent a text field from running too long? And then if you have a line with 10 characters and then another line with 30, how do you keep both of those labels centered and fit within the window?
I assume you're talking about within this P-Touch program.
Correct.
Here.
Correct.
It does have the ability to change the way your wrapping happens with it. So let me see if I could share this P-Touch again here. P-Touch editor window.
I'm going to turn off my camera to give you some more
Yeah, same
screen.
here.
So now I've got the P-Touch on the screen. Yes, I do.
No, we're still seeing.
No, you don't.
Okay, now I do. Now I do. So let's say we go to a screen like this one that says Deck Manager 2, and I'm going to unlink this thing here, and I'm going to go to this one Deck Manager 2, and that's sort of a long one there. I'm not sure I could fit it into 2 lines, but if I double click on this button here and go to the either the font or the expanded position somewhere in here, drawing, text, right at the beginning. You have fixed frame size with wrap is one of the options, then fixed frame size, then long text, then automatic length. So this actual one is set for wrapping. So if I had a long thing on there, it would wrap. So you can just double click on the box and define how you want it to show up. In another box like here, Deck Manager 2, same as a long one, but I can set it to be wrapping if I want to. So there's all different kinds of options for doing that. What I want to talk about one other little thing, which I'm not going to go into detail here, but we will talk about it at some point. We haven't planned on another show which has to do with intercom, but when you're setting levels in your intercom system, let's say you have a bunch of belt packs, wired belt packs, a bunch of wireless belt packs, a bunch of panels. And the problem with setting levels is, and it sort of helps having a meter, because then you can meter when everybody's audio is coming in. But if you're setting levels and listening to a belt pack, you're hearing your side tone. And the side tone, which is another thing you might want to adjust if it's too loud or too soft as you put the belt packs out, won't allow you to set a proper level on that mic. So what you need to do is, let's say I want to set the levels from my hardwired belt packs to my Riedel system. I take 2 hardwired belt packs, talk in one, listen in the other. Set the listen level on the one I'm listening to so I have a level I can remember. And then listening to that channel, I go to my Riedel system and talk on that channel, and I hear myself coming in on that channel. So then I adjust my level coming out of the Riedel to match that level. So I then, when I'm talking, and I compare belt pack, Riedel, belt pack, Riedel. So it all comes into my ear fine. Then I'll go to 2 panels, 2 Riedel panels on headsets, do the same thing. They have side tone as well, which confuses you. Talk in one, listen on the other, set a level so you can hear yourself. Make sure you put your earbud back in your ear. Set a level so you can hear yourself. and then go to the hardwired belt packs, talk on one of those and listen on the Riedel and set the level coming back in. And this document that I just brought up on the screen, which has way too many words in it, basically steps through that whole listen to one belt pack and everything. And this was one of the first things I learned in comms from my mentor, Bob Turkow, who taught me everything I know about comms in the beginning. And actually, even in the end, he taught me. But this is the process he did, setting levels between his RTS belt packs and the panels and everything. And it really was quite amazing watching him do that, because he'd done it so many times. He was going really fast, listing different things, and I didn't know what he was doing. Why did he list all those different things? Well, that's because you need to listen to what the real level is coming out of the belt pack.
So comm balancing is very much like RF coordination. Take your least flexible device first, moving to your most flexible device when it comes to level setting, right? So, you know, I think we're going to wrap up here. There's so many.
We're 2 hours and 10 minutes into our 1 hour session.
Exactly. Well, we knew this one was going to be popular. I just put an hour up there because, you know, if I actually told you what it was going to be, everybody'd be like, well, I just want an hour more now. But, you know, I would like to talk about what's coming up this afternoon. Unity. So we're seeing Pete's got his questions. He's scrolling through stuff here. The Unity webinar this afternoon with Jesse. I think the whole idea of expanding our comms network, I see you got our schedule there up for everybody. Some of this is in the works, so it's not 100% confirmed. So if people get a screen snap, maybe it's right, maybe it's not. But the idea of making our network bigger now, and the cellular network being a part of our comm system. I think it's pretty exciting personally. I think it's going to open up new ways to communicate with the broader production that's on a show site. Next week then, let's see, we got a lot going on. We're doing RAD next week, RAD specific. It's going to be James and his team. We're going to do a lunch with Pete for RF coordination. Obviously, it's going to take more than an hour, I'm pretty sure now. We're going to touch on Unity again, but in this case, we're going to talk about it in the field application, how it was used at the New York Marathon. And that's a really large application, but in some ways scales perfectly for whether you're in a convention center, or whether you're in a ballroom, or whether you're in someone's facility. Let's see, Artist Meteor Net with Bill Saltzer. That one, folks, we need to embrace the fact that we can be a part of routing audio, video, data, and communications. You want job security? Job security is being comfortable being a part of that. And Artist is a powerful tool for that, as well as the MeteorNet software. We're going to be swimming across lanes for the foreseeable future here. Let's learn to be kind when you're doing the backstroke. Try to make sure you're not hitting somebody on the head, but we're gonna have to learn. We're gonna have to adapt. One of the exciting ones, Vectorworks plugins. We're kind of going a little different here. We're trying to address a lot of different opportunities. So we're going to do a 2-a-day that day. We're going to do something like at 1 p.m. Eastern, we're going to do a Vectorworks plugin. And then the afternoon, we're going to do wireless workbench. I was just on the phone with that team this morning. They are excited about it. They're pumped. I think you will be too. Mac, any closing thoughts?
Not right off the top of my head. I think we've covered that. I was just sending Pete a text, but we'll talk later.
Yeah, we got to work on his tapping.
Yeah, you got to stop tapping your fingers, Pete. You were muting Kelly. You were tapping. Seriously, we're muting Kelly's audio by tapping so loud. Yeah, I think we have a lot of exciting stuff coming up. It's nothing's in the calendar yet, but at the beginning of today's session, Kelly and I were in contact with Figure 53, the people who make QLab, about arranging a QLab session.
Absolutely.
And there's Sure is going to be presenting on several different topics. There's a lot of stuff in the pipeline that's not firm on the calendar yet. So keep checking back to the website to see the updated schedule. And there's a lot of exciting stuff coming down the pipeline.
Yeah, past webinars are all there, practicalshowtech.com, right? Go to the archive. Usually by the next day, we have that webinar posted. Great place to, and share those. Man, just give them out everywhere you can. We're going to start hopefully getting these out to universities so they can have access to them. This is a time to be collaborative. We're going to all go back to work and things are going to pick up again. And hopefully Pete will be able to get his road show going once that happens. But that's it for today. We hope to see you guys back here this afternoon later on with Unity and Jess Heimlich, and have a great afternoon.